All right, welcome into episode 7. This is the real episode 7 of Save the Franchise. We're recording this nice little mid-morning podcast on July 5th. Boys, how was your 4th of July? How'd it go?
It's really fun. One of the greatest days of the year.
Yep, pretty fire. We always do a big party, get to see all the fireworks. It's a great time.
All right. I like it. Yep, pretty good time yesterday. America's kind of kickback holiday. Perfect when it lands on a Friday. I mean, does it get better than that? You know?
And you gotta love America being the one country that celebrates its independence the day we declared it.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. Yep. If there's any British people watching, love y'all. Keep watching, please. But I'm gonna need you to hold this L for the rest of the episode, okay? All right. Let's kick this off. We're gonna talk about some general roster construction and philosophy in terms of opening up 4-year Super Bowl windows. Okay, so we're looking at teams that really have a true formula that allows them to compete and kind of battle against the NFL's innate parity that's created via the draft and the salary cap, and are kind of able to create 4-year windows despite the odds. So what I mean when I say 4-year windows, a period of 4 years or more where you've got a significant shot at winning the Super Bowl across those years, right? And so you're a legitimate contender each of those years, and so that's very difficult to do. Not many teams do it. Just as a kind of to give you an idea, what that typically what that can look like is since 2010, teams with there are only 6 teams who have appeared in the Super Bowl twice within a 4-year window. So that's the Seahawks. They went back to back with appearances. The Broncos, the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Rams, and the Eagles. Okay, the Eagles just now doing that in these last 3 years. So it's a difficult thing to do. It doesn't happen often. You'll see teams that go to the Super Bowl can never get back. The Bengals went. How many years ago is that now? Was that 2020? I believe. The Bengals go, and they've kind of been mired in a lot of struggles lately, despite keeping a lot of the core pieces, right? And they haven't been able to get back there, and they haven't even made the playoffs a couple of years in there. So, very similarly constructed teams can, even if they make one Super Bowl, it doesn't ensure that you can keep that ball rolling. So let's get in here, guys, and let's talk about just some general. We're going to go through like some of the key pillars that we think are the biggest influential factors, and then we're going to address how those relate to one another, which are most important, helping each other out, which combine the best, and also which are the most important. So let's kick it off with quarterback here. Tyler, do you want to get the ball rolling with some thoughts on like just why is quarterback a part of this discussion? Why is one individual position on a 22 starter team this important?
Yeah. Now, quarterback is clearly the most important position in the NFL. They have to be a leader of the offense and really the entire team in general. And any success in the NFL usually gets accredited to the quarterback, and it gets a little bit overblown in my opinion, but I still think there's a lot of bases behind it. Mm-hmm. And in terms of really establishing a long-term Super Bowl window, having a great QB is very important, but I don't think I think it's possible to do it with at least an above-average QB too. That's how. But yeah, you still need an above-average QB, but I don't think you really need a Patrick Mahomes to really do it. If that makes any sense. So.
Right.
Yeah. Eagles have done it with Jalen Hurts, who is, I think, by all accounts, an above-average QB in the NFL. And honestly, the Niners have kind of done it with Brock Purdy, too, in my opinion. And he's also an above-average QB. And I don't think you really need a Josh Allen, per se, but it certainly helps.
So here's a really good question to kick into this is obviously having that Josh Allen, having the Patrick Mahomes, the Tom Brady, one of those elite top-end quarterbacks who plays exceedingly well in the playoffs, plays their best ball then, is incredibly helpful in this window. I mean, Austin, what do you think? Do you think that, we've watched it, Mahomes is extremely flexible with his contract, and Tom Brady consistently took less and allowed those cap hits to be lower than they could have been for sure through a lot of, especially those later years in New England. Do you think that just the elite quarterback is the key influential factor, or do you think maybe having some sort of cap relief along with the elite quarterback is really what the true bonus is?
Yeah, no, you've pretty much perfectly segued into exactly what I wanted to talk about, which is that you kind of have a few different roles here. I really view it as like there can be like four types of quarterbacks that really can get you to the Super Bowl. One is that type of guy like Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, even like Peyton Manning when he kind of came to the Broncos on like a kind of end of career contract that wasn't super lucrative. And so it's like a smaller pay, and they're able to pay the other guys. So you have this veteran guy that saves some money for the rest of the team. Next, you can kind of have a team like the 49ers you mentioned with Brock Purdy. You just bring in that rookie guy. He's good, but his contract's really low. So you're able to succeed that way. Three is a team like the Rams that is already really good and is kind of succeeding on its own and has all the pieces, but all they need to do is with some extra cap that they've saved, throw it out to a guy like Matthew Stafford, bring him in, he fits right in, he becomes the elite quarterback, meshes really well. That's almost kind of like the Buccaneers bringing Tom Brady down. Again, they didn't give him a lot. That was kind of like Peyton Manning's end of career contract, but it kind of feels the same way. And then the last one is a team like the Eagles in 2015, the year where they won with Nick Foles, where they kind of, Carson Wentz goes down, Nick Foles comes in, just kind of plays that role, but the team is already so good, they really kind of were able to succeed with whoever they put in that role. Obviously, I don't think they could have just thrown anyone under center, but Nick Foles, at least a guy that's experienced enough that he got to the NFL, can be a starting quarterback. I really think that's how it works. So I think having a guy like Tom Brady or Mahomes that is this like top level talent and then can say, okay, I'm okay taking a small pay cut, spread the wealth a little bit. I'll be here for a long time. I'll get paid. Let's win a lot of championships. That works really well, but it's not necessarily a necessity in my opinion.
Tyler, what do you think about that contention that you could have dropped just about anybody on that Eagles team?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's true at all. Okay.
I don't know. You haven't seen much success from Nick Foles like going forward. The Jaguars tried to give him a huge contract, and he goes down there and didn't do much. So I've long held that I don't think Nick Foles is actually that good. He's still an NFL starting quarterback and can win a Super Bowl, but I think that most starting quarterbacks could have filled that role.
Now, that Eagles team got outplayed in Super Bowl in 2017 at every single position other than QB, in my opinion. If you watched a game, every single throw the Eagles had to make was completely contested into triple coverage with a mediocre receiver. Well, Tom Brady was just throwing to wide open guys the entire game.
Yeah. Well, you see, and I don't disagree with you in the sense that I feel like we should have won that game, and he made way more throws than I would have liked against our defense. But so why, in that case, like if you have a lot of faith in Foles and his ability, why do you think he didn't go on to have success? Are you just kind of blaming the Jaguars organization?
Well, yeah, that's part of it.
Okay.
I also think Foles is a very streaky QB, where he's had stretches in the past, like in 2013, 2014. He had the 7-touchdown game. That season, he finished with 25 touchdowns, 2 picks, while only playing half the season. Like, he's had stretches in his career where he just plays out of his mind, but majority of the time, he really is, an average QB. But
okay,
I think during that playoff run, he really was special.
Yeah, I mean, he was. So in that case, do you guys think Joe Burrow kind of fits into that streaky bucket where he goes on streaks, but maybe that's why they haven't been able to get back? Or is it just all the other issues, injuries, defense, all that stuff?
I think it's other issues, and I don't think Joe Burrow plays that well in the playoffs.
Yeah.
My 2 cents on the Nick Foles thing is when you roll back that tape from the playoffs, dude was on a heater. Like, the high leverage, he's making like 10 high leverage throws a game, which is a ridiculous number. Like, if you're trying to kind of protect your quarterback a little bit and let them play field general and kind of control the game, you want them making like 3 high leverage throws in a game where they like it's a key down to continue a drive. Foles was like all over that through that playoff run. I think that was like he just legit was playing like an elite quarterback through there, and it just so happens that he's never like really figured out how to consistently hit that high.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so I think Burrow just hasn't played that well in the playoffs, and then I think the other thing is the team's not structured very well at all. I mean, and we'll talk about roster construction a little bit later, but like they don't have even on offense. I don't think the structure's been that good, or the scheming. So, yeah. Do we have any more? I mean, I think we have some more to talk about with quarterback, right? Like, what else
Yeah.
do we want to go ahead, Tyler?
Yeah, I want to segue this into the whole idea about winning under a rookie contract.
Mhm.
So it seems like it would be the ideal thing. You get a lot more cap space. However, if you really look at QBs who actually won a Super Bowl under a rookie contract, the last one was Patrick Mahomes in 2019,
Mhm.
who was a generational QB. Before that was Russell Wilson, who 2013, who had one of the greatest defenses we've ever seen assembled, and and the one before that was Joe Flacco. So a good mix, but it hasn't been like a clear trend. It's mostly been the guys making maybe not a max contract because of like Mahomes taking a slightly smaller contract than he probably could have gotten.
Yeah.
But we haven't been seeing these like QBs or not like rookie contract QBs really go all the way. And it kind of like if I had a young QB, just say like Washington's probably the most clear example over this. You have Jaden Daniels who looks like an absolute superstar pushing. Is it really worth pushing your chips though? And like right now for the next 3 years, what do you feel about that?
So I think here's my thought on this: is a lot of those teams, we look at them and they're amazing and they're going places we didn't think they could go. And part of the reason that it's surprising and it's so cool and it's electric and it's so fun to talk about is the quarterback is raising them up. Well, when you're having a quarterback genuinely pull a team, they have to play like Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady to go win a Super Bowl doing that. You know, like you got to play like one of the greats to do that. And I think just Stroud is a really good quarterback, for instance. You know, when we're talking about him, and you know they've had 2 playoff wins. He's played good in the playoffs too. You know, Daniels has played good in the playoffs. You need more than that out of them than just being like a high level, close to elite or elite quarterback. I think you need them to play like a champion in order to actually drag teams, and because most of those teams where you have that rookie quarterback, they're not the bona fide, genuine, like superstar studded rosters, you know, to get those elite quarterbacks, because typically you're drafting those quarterbacks pretty high, right? So I think you could argue Mahomes is actually the exception, though, even because you've got multiple Hall of Fame talents, a Hall of Fame coach, and a lot of talent across that roster to help him out on that rookie contract. So you could argue he didn't even exactly do it the right way on his rookie contract. And even then Brady as well. Austin, you can chip in right after this. But even Brady as well. I mean, those first 2 Super Bowls when Brady was on his rookie contract, he's not really pulling the team. I would argue that Mahomes was pulling the team, but Brady wasn't really pulling the team so much as like really kind of rounding out the team and all that. But both were operating with very, very good support systems. So I think you could argue that even them, they're a little fraudulent. And then obviously Russ has that great defense. So go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, no, I don't totally disagree with that. We've seen both of these guys like be able to kind of have a good supporting cast, especially earlier in their career, and then you kind of see later on they kind of start to do more on their own. Like in these more recent years, Mahomes has still had like a lot of the guys. You know, he's had Reed and a lot, like he's always had Kelsey, obviously, and the defense has gotten better. But he's been doing more with less. You know, losing a guy like Tyreek Hill and then keeping up a lot of the same production with some similar new receivers. Kind of same deal. Like in Brady's early years, had a good defense going. Obviously, always had Bill Belichick. Had really good play calling. Kind of fit into the role. I will say, like, I think that he like Mahomes came in and really put the league on watch. Like I think they were pretty much elite from the get-go, especially Brady just kind of coming in like basically his first year and just taking over, and then going straight to the Super Bowl MVP, and then getting 3 in the span of 4 years. I mean, it really is kind of that like Mahomes type run that we've been seeing now in this decade. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, so I think that's I think that's part of the reason why it would be my answer to that Tyler, is just that like even the really generational rookies aren't ready to truly like make up for massive roster holes, and so many of these teams have them. Like the Texans have had significant holes in the O-line and other pieces. The Commanders, last year, obviously the defense, up the spine wasn't very good. So there's these. You're asking them to pull off something that really only the elite quarterbacks and the elite quarterbacks in their later years have really managed to pull off. I don't know. What do you think about that, Tyler? Or do you think there's a different answer?
I kind of agree with that. I think that probably is the reason why they haven't been successful. But we've seen these teams try to do a whole rebuild within a year once they find that QB. Like Washington's been very aggressive. They're trying to take value of guys around the league who are kind of like having down years to a relative extent. I mean, we saw them trade for Deebo Samuel. Who else did they get? Oh, they traded
Laremy Tunsil.
Yeah, Laremy Tunsil. They got him, which was still a crazy trade from the Texans because I thought they were trying to go all in too with their young QB, but yeah, they're trying to really go all in. They're trying to compete right now. They know the NFC is still weaker than the AFC. I actually think it's going to be stronger this year, but it still is the weaker conference. And yeah, they're really trying to go all in. Like, is that really the right way to take your approach with Daniels, or you just build up a strong team over year after year, drafting good players and like just doing kind of what most other teams have done in the past who won Super Bowls?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So I think we'll come back to quarterback and how it relates to some of the other pillars later. But let's go ahead and move on to head coach and talk about that. Some of the pieces of is the CEO head coach more important? Is the play caller more important? Do you have to have both? I mean, what's the deal there? And then what are kind of some general philosophies that kind of tie coaches like Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, coaches like that together in terms of really being able to influence that? Austin, you want to kick this off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously we've gone into a lot of length in some previous episodes on like the importance of the coach. And you see like many of these last Super Bowl teams had someone that was truly very experienced and was able to lead the team. So whether that's going to be a guy like Nick Sirianni, who we've seen have a lot of success in the NFL recently, but is still pretty young. And then you got Andy Reid, you got Bill Belichick, obviously all those years. But even like you could then say, okay, like down in Tampa Bay, like didn't have like a whole bunch of like, I mean, I guess fairly experienced coaching, but not necessarily high level coaching. But you basically have Tom Brady running the team. And that's something that we pretty much saw from the Patriots, is that Tom Brady would run the offense and Bill Belichick would run the defense. And so he had a lot of experience in that role. And so you definitely a lot of times have these really experienced guys. But I think it is possible to win with like a younger coach. Like, what would you guys kind of say?
So here's something interesting, right? So correct me if I'm missing someone here, guys, but I think the first time we've had a coach with less than 3 seasons of experience under their belt appear in a Super Bowl was the Atlanta Falcons in 2016. And so everybody else, I mean, so Zach Taylor had 3 years of experience. That was his 3rd year on the Bengals as the head coach, right? And then everybody else, like in recent Super Bowl years, it's Andy Reid with tons of experience. It's Kyle Shanahan with plenty of experience. I guess that first one, how many years had he been there? He had been there for 3 years. Okay, so Shanahan had been there for 3 years in 2019. But McVay had been there for had quite a bit of experience before he appeared in a Super Bowl, and so I just kind of think that head coach is an extremely administrative position. I think it takes a lot of practice to get right at a high level. I think doing that side of it is by far the most important factor. Like, I don't think you can go to the Super Bowl or be a significant contending team without serious guidance and very well-performed coaching in terms of the holistic view of the organization and how we're going to approach things and the philosophy we're going to install in the building. I don't think you can be that kind of contender without that. And so I think when we look, this is a little bit of a side discussion, but when we talk about hiring new coaches and things like that, we really talk about the play calling a lot, and I still think that's relevant. I think the CEO ability is the floor. Like, you have to have it, right? The people management, you have to have it. It's a necessary component, and then the play calling is something that can really raise the ceiling and raise the potency and make up for certain flaws and holes in your roster. So it's that additive factor rather than the necessary component. Tyler, what do you think about that?
I kind of agree with your take almost entirely. Just recently, the Eagles' new swing tackle, Kendall Lamb from Miami. He was there previously. He pretty much just talked about the differences in culture that the coaches developed just from OTAs in general. Like, there's a difference. Like, I'm not saying like Dolphins are horrible in terms of coaching or anything like that, but there's a difference between a coach who really genuinely believes his team is winning a Super Bowl versus a coach who is just trying to make the playoffs or something along those energy, or isn't really trying to like build a culture. Like Sirianni, I criticize him a lot, but I guarantee you every single day he genuinely believes and tries to motivate every single player in that locker room that they are winning a Super Bowl. Like, I don't think there's a single player on the Eagles roster who believes they're not winning a Super Bowl. And I same thing about the Lions too. There's no way Dan Campbell, if a player says, "Oh, I don't think we're winning this year, coach," that player is getting cut or traded or something. Like, I think a large part of it is these culture builder coaches that really do help out long term. I do also think you mentioned it earlier too. I think having consistent coaches and not just changing them out every year is very important. But turnover usually hurts more than it helps. Like, yeah, I understand bringing in some new ideas sometimes is positive, but just having the same coaches there, the players develop better relationships with their coaches. I think that also really does help establishing like a long window.
Yeah. Well, and the coaches learn and improve too. I think that's one of the most underrated factors. I mean, obviously, if the coach can't figure it out at some point down the line, I'm not saying every coach should be given like 10 years to try and figure it out and become the best coach, but like a lot of these coaches should be getting more runway than I think they get in terms of like, you just need time to learn it. And some people are going to learn it faster and some people are going to learn it slower. And it's human nature part of the job. So, yeah, I mean, so Austin, what do you think about, do you think defensive versus offensive matters? I mean, we were talking about that being an additive factor, but do you think it genuinely actually ends up mattering in terms of opening a large Super Bowl window? Like, is that a relevant factor, defensive versus offensive play calling in the head coach?
Not necessarily in the head coach, in the sense like, okay, it's a little cliche to say like, okay, you need someone that's offensive minded and defensive minded. I mean, but it is kind of true. I don't think you're gonna win in the NFL, especially not the Super Bowl, if you don't have someone on your team that is running a high level offensive scheme and a high level defensive scheme. But it doesn't necessarily need to be the same person. For example, the Chiefs have had a lot of success on offense with Andy Reid, but the defense was kind of lagging. But now we've seen a lot of success with kind of like Spags really lifting up that defense. Really starting to have that two-faced team. And then you have, just like the Patriots, you had Bill Belichick's defense that was always elite. And then you have Tom Brady running the offense. And of course, like you've had like plenty of people that come in, like Josh McDaniels, like helping run the, being offensive coordinator, being the play caller. Like it definitely is obviously a team effort. But you have to have someone that's really kind of throwing out a good scheme on both sides of the ball, or you're going to end up with a team kind of like the Bengals that you have a really high level offense and the defense is lagging behind, all that stuff.
So yeah, I think that's an interesting way to put it. I think the other thing is just that the hiring of the head coach really matters. Like their ability to understand people and pick out who should be part of an organization is crucial in my opinion. I think something to illustrate that is a lot of people don't see this, but if you go watch an actual training camp video or like an OTA video or something, and just instead of watching the players for a minute, go around and look at just how many people are on the field that are coaches or assistants or random people interacting with the players. There's a ton of people in an NFL organization. I know people generally understand that idea, but think about like the downhill effects proper hiring can have, like with just people doing a better job, being more conscientious, more focused, more team oriented across the board. Like, think about how much of an impact that can have when every single person that the player's interacting with, learning from, talking to, getting tips from, working on his honing his craft day to day. Like, the better those people are across the board, that's a significant that's a significant impact there. That's a big deal. Yeah, so I don't know, Tyler, anything else to chime in on this, or should we move on to something else?
I think we can move on to the next topic
All
right
right,
now.
yeah, I think head coach is a little bit more important to just talk about how it integrates with the overall team philosophy and all that. So yeah, we'll get into front office and team construction. And so generally, let's just tackle this first. Tyler, I'll give you first crack at it. Offensive or defensive? What's the way to go?
I think it has to be offensive. Offensive players typically last longer too, just to start off. Like when you draft a receiver, they are probably going to be good until they're 31, QB usually till upper 30s. It's just these players last longer. So if we're really talking about building an extended window, having guys that you know will be in their prime longer helps out a lot too. But more importantly, I think offense is just more important to being a good football team. Like, if you have a top 10 offense, nearly 100% of the time, or maybe not 100 because there are the one-offs out there, the really embarrassing teams, but you're usually like not even just a playoff team, you're usually considered a contender, no matter how the state of your defense looks, just from the fact that if you make some moves at the deadline or some rookies start stepping up, you're a contender. If as long as you have a great offense. So I think offense is a lot more important.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, I agree. I think it's been demonstrated time and time again, especially in recent years, that offense is what you really need to go win championships. I mean, you have to have it. It's non-negotiable. I mean, the only team I think's kind of played with that fire the last few years is that you can argue the Chiefs this past year were not really like a powerhouse offensively. They just kind of played situational football across the board. But I think you still argue the better side of the ball in the playoffs is the offense. Because you have Mahomes executing it, and like the side of the ball that was making the high leverage plays in the key moments that really drove the success was still the offensive side of the ball. But I mean, you go through and look at the rest of the teams, and it's offense, offense, offense. I mean, both the Eagles' appearances in the last couple of years. Yes, the defense has been good. Don't get me wrong. Like, they've been powered by a good pass rush on that side of the ball. It's been helpful, but like the offensive line's very good. There's a solid run game, and then you've got really good receivers, powering that passing attack. I mean, you go back to the 2022 Super Bowl, and I mean, they threw the ball all over the yard on a fairly good Chiefs defense, And so the Rams have been like that. The Bengals have been like that. The Buccaneers were like that. The 49ers absolutely have been powered by that offensive success. And so, yeah, I mean, defense matters, but the offensive side of the ball is like what gets you there. That's the real benchmark for, what level of contention a team is, in my opinion. Austin, do you want to kind of talk about maybe how does you build the defense to complement the offense? Like, what are the key ways to do that? Is it maybe like focusing on having an elite position group to drive, defensive success? How do you moderate wanting to use more of your resources and dedicate more of your stuff to the offense because that's more important versus, still having something to make things happen on the defense?
Yeah, no, that's a good transition because I honestly wanted to, although I agree with y'all, but at a pretty high level, I think that an elite defense can be pretty prolific in helping you win an NFL
Yeah.
championship, especially with a team like the 2018 Patriots, that had a really solid
Mm-hmm.
defense. Or even like, I kind of disagree with you with this Eagles team, just in the sense that I don't think you give the defense enough credit. Obviously, the offense is insane with that offensive line, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, the receivers, all that. Like, they were just a great, well-rounded team. But I feel like the defense is really what kind of gave them a jump start in that Super Bowl. Because I was going to say, when you have a really good offense, that just means that you need to play better offense than the other team. If you just have these two offenses that are going against each other, you have a game like the Bills versus the Chiefs, where you're just lobbing touchdowns, and it's basically who gets the ball last, something of that nature. You really do need to have that defense that's going to be able to slow down the game, wear out the other side, and give you the ability to play some slower offense and grind out the clock a little bit more. And so, I don't necessarily want to say that the offense isn't important or that the offense is everything you need, because I think you want to have a good defense. And honestly, to me, like if you had like an arbitrary budget of 10 to like build a team, I would rather have like a 7 defense and a 3 offense than a 5 and
Wow.
5.
See,
But you would also say that you'd rather have like a 7 offense and a 3 defense. That's fine. But like I don't think you want to have both be
that's fair.
mediocre.
I
You
I
don't
get that.
necessarily want to like the Eagles are just like a 10 and 10, so it worked out for them. But I think a lot of teams try to be like a 5 and 5 and like it doesn't really work out. One of them has to be like kind of generational, but I think it doesn't have to be the offense in my opinion. It
So
can be the defense.
so I want to push back against that a little bit because I
Okay.
think you brought up the Chiefs Bills game. Offensive, just
Hmm.
explosion. The defense isn't doing anything. Da da da. I mean, going into those playoffs, and I don't think the defenses were playing particularly bad, but going into those playoffs, the Bills were, I believe, that year #1 in EPA per play. One of the top was the #1 scoring defense in the NFL. Everybody's talking about how good they were. They've got a great secondary, a bunch of impact players on the defense. I think you could argue that the pass rush wasn't very good. So maybe if you want to argue that's Mahomes' kryptonite or something, you could, I guess you could go down that path. But they were really good, and the Chiefs' defense was opportunistic and blitzing and playing pretty well with Spags. I mean, I kind of think that was just a case. I think that was exactly the case study I would pull out to show offense matters more. I mean, when these elite quarterbacks get going, it's easier for them to succeed and impose their will on a game than elite defenses. I think I think the Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl, this most recent one, is a little bit like that was just the discrepancy in talent there across the lines was just so dramatic that
Yeah.
and the play style the Eagles came in with, like, all due credit to them, like the plan they had for utilizing the talent was incredible, right? And so I think that was just I think that's a little bit more of an outlier in terms of team construction, in that, like, one piece just kind of broke the other teams, and so that's kind of what I was getting at, is if you're going to use the defense as kind of an impactful part of your team, but more of the Robin to Batman, right? How do you kind of want to build out that defense? Like, what's the way to do it? Is it being structurally sound across the board? Is it having a serious impact unit and then having the rest play in conjunction with that? Or what do you think about that?
I think you have to have one unit that is like people are going to talk about for generations, and then you need to have everything else needs to be well rounded. So you mentioned the Bills. I That was what I was about to say, is that their pass rush was left a lot to be desired for. That's why they went out and like tried to get a guy like Von Miller that they could bring in and try to get some more pass rush, because their secondary was decent, but they were not getting a lot up front. They were not pressuring Mahomes. They're not getting through. He had plenty of time to throw, and when you have a guy like Mahomes, no matter like no secondary is like good enough to just play for 10 seconds, 15 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
once the QB's out of the pocket, and it's a guy like Mahomes with receivers like that, with creativity like Andy Reid, they're going to get picked apart. And it's the same thing that the Bills did back against the Chiefs. I don't think at that time yet had like the pass rush that they've built in the last many years, especially like with guys like Chris Jones getting really good. And so I think you need to have like a well-rounded nature, but you need to have one of your units that is just next level. So for the Eagles this year, it was that pass rush. For the Patriots in 2018, it was that secondary, headed by Stephon Gilmore. Think back all the way back to like the Ravens in what is that, 2011, and having that linebacker group with, you know, the greatest linebacker of all time, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, like this whole like middle of the field brute force team that was rushing, blitzing, good pass coverage as well. And then everyone else was pretty good. They had good secondary. They had a good defensive line going. And so I feel like that's really how it has to go. Where you're gonna have one group that's pretty much you can't scheme against, and so you're gonna have to go a different direction. But even when you go a different direction, you're still between a rock and a hard place for the offense.
Okay, so Tyler, you can address that and kind of talk through what you think about that. I know you haven't talked in a minute, so you can go through that. But one thing I want to pose to you to kind of contextualize it is the team that kind of breaks what we've been talking about with the defense needing to be well rounded and having a significant, like, juggernaut unit. is the 2019 Chiefs, right? I mean, they're just ridiculously explosive, all-time explosive on offense sort of team with Hall of Famers, at key positions, and, just really lighting up the scoreboard against teams. And that defense, you have Chris Jones, who's probably a Hall of Famer right at the end of his career. But beyond that, there's not a unit that's standing out. There's nobody else that you would consider a blue chip player or anything like that. So do you think they're an outlier and not how we should contextualize building 4-year window teams? Or do you think maybe there is something to you can actually ignore defense that much?
Yeah. So I have multiple teams that kind of do fit into that. An interesting one I think is actually the 2023 Eagles, the team that collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
But that team finished with a third worst defense in the NFL in terms of scoring. And I actually think it's been the third worst even over the past 2 seasons, or maybe fourth worst, because Panthers last year were kind of historic. But the defense was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But that team still had one of the hardest schedules we've seen in NFL history, even having to have a stretch against the Chiefs, Bills, Cowboys when they were good, Niners, all on the road for 6 straight weeks. And that team was 11-1 at one point before the collapse. I think almost any single media person would have considered that team contenders, and they were similar to that one. The offense was still electric. You still had A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and the number 1 O-line. So I actually think you could do that mold. It's just in order to actually win a Super Bowl with that one, you really need that generational QB. But more about the defensive side that I kind of do completely disagree with is look at the Broncos this past season. Their defense was higher in a lot of advanced analytics than even the Eagles were.
Mm-hmm.
And they were never considered, and their offense wasn't atrocious by any means, and they were never really seen as contenders. Not a single person even considered them having a chance against the Bills unless some freak accident happened or something like that. And that defense was really good. It had those elite talent you were talking about. They had a defensive player of the year in Patrick Surtain. They really had a very good defense, and they really weren't a contender. But just say you flip that, you look at the number 1 offense in the league, and you get the Detroit Lions last season in terms of EPA. They were a contender, and their defense was still good, but they were a contender because of that offense. It's just why I think you swap the defensive ranks around a little bit. I think you see some clear trends. But
mm-hmm. Austin, you want to wrap up? Any last thoughts on overall team building? I guess we spent the entire time with overall team building philosophy on offense, defense. You want to wrap up offensive defense a little bit, and we'll address just a couple other things about the team building.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Tyler drives a good point. The last thing I wanted to say about that 2019 Chiefs is I feel like although it really was that explosive offense first with not as good of a defense, they went into the fourth quarter losing by 10 points in that game, and kind of exploded for a 21-0 fourth quarter to end up winning. And so that really is that benefit that I think you get from the offense. I think it's important to have a good defense. But if you have a bad defense and you are losing, you still have that threat to be able to go ahead and especially win a game in the end. I feel like that's what we've seen from guys like Mahomes, even Tom Brady, even though he's usually had pretty good defenses, just the ability to win in the fourth quarter. And that's what you get for having an experienced offense. And so I agree with you, Tyler, the Broncos, I don't think they had enough explosion on offense that if the Bills were able to pick apart that defense or find weaknesses in it, the offense is not sufficient enough to be able to pick that up. Whereas with the Lions, if teams were able to exploit their bad defense, that offense was explosive enough to be able to kind of keep the punches going back and forth. So you drive a good point there where I don't think that the defense can't bail you out. If the defense is so good that you stay ahead, you're good. But if the defense starts lacking, you're going to have an offense that's good enough. Whereas if the offense is not doing that well, the defense isn't going to be able to just bail you out. And unless you start getting 4 pick sixes, the offense has to be the team to score points. You're not going to win if you don't score points. So I think that's a good way of looking at it.
So, before we segue in, I have another thing to talk about, team building and roster construction. But before we segue into that, the last thing I'll say is I just think it's, when you look at it, it is more effective to build a very good offense, high-flying offense with an opportunistic defense than it is to build a high-flying, elite, lockdown defense with a opportunistic offense. I think opportunistic offenses fail and struggle too much in the playoffs in the high leverage moments, and it's not really you can't really build it well like that. I kind of think they don't really exist. So yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about just location of blue chips on the team. So outside of quarterback, do you guys think it matters significantly where the blue chips play, where the impact players play on the team? Like, is it bad to have your blue chip playing linebacker and running back? You know, does that matter, or is it more just like overall, how does the team fit together? Is that the real difference making factor? Tyler?
Yeah, no, I think obviously there's some positions that are more important than others. I mean, I think the most essential ones for actually being contenders, other than QB, are the lines. Both of them. I think O-line and D-line are very important because they can completely control a game. And that's kind of what happened in last year's Super Bowl. Eagles O-line is ridiculous, and the D-line also played out of their minds too. It's I mean, you could go look at almost any single football game, whether it be regular season or postseason, and you can tell a line difference almost more than anything else because we've seen some good QBs just like completely fold, and a lot of times it isn't even their fault if like guys are instantly winning from the D line. So I do believe investing heavily into lines is important, but I also think you could still build a contending team with some unvaluable pieces per se. Like just say you get a absolute blue chip player like a Kyle Hamilton just to transform a secondary. Like, yeah, safety is not the most important position, but I think there's some guys who are talented enough out there, such as like Fred Warner too. It's another good example over that. I still think it's better to go for like mostly linemen, but I think you could go that route as long as you have a GM who's really creative enough to build a semi-complete roster.
Mm-hmm. Austin, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Tyler, and I'm so glad he brought up offense. When he said some positions being more important than others, I was expecting, maybe some high-flying positions like receiver, running back, whatnot. But I totally agree. Me being a former offensive lineman, that when I watch football games, like instead of watching the guys running routes or the QB running around, like I'm watching the pass blocks, I'm watching pulling guards, and really seeing how that works out. And we've seen where teams will draft one guy to anchor their offensive line and instantly just become that much better. And we've seen, I think, teams start to value it more in the draft and get it in more so than that, like getting that pick right as well. Like in the last like 5 drafts, I think we've seen an offensive lineman go at least top 10, if not a couple times top 5. And so people are really putting that importance in the position because they see when you get that guy, like it makes a huge difference, especially if it is someone at left tackle or center, and is going to be able to come in and anchor that offensive line. And so I totally agree with that. And then kind of like some of the other things that you were saying, like I want to add on to that and say, you can have a guy someplace on defense that you're going to have to like scheme for. And so as long as they're using him properly, you're right. Like one of those guys, like in the secondary or up front or at linebacker, can play a huge role. Because maybe you are using them to basically cover a quarter of the field, and then you can plug in whatever else you have in the other spots. Or maybe it's a pass rusher that's basically disrupting on every single play, and then you don't need elite secondary because they don't need to cover for as long. And so it really doesn't necessarily matter exactly where they are. I don't know if just having the best punter in the league is really going to help you out that much. But having a blue chip guy at one of those like important defensive positions, whether it's D-line, linebacker, or secondary, really like it does. It's not necessarily important exactly which one it is, as long as you actually come in with a good game plan and use them properly. Because we've seen teams that have had great players, but don't necessarily do the right things with them, and so they're still able to be exploited.
Yeah, so the other thing I'll throw out, and then I think we'll kind of move to weighing some of these coach, team building, roster construction, quarterback, all that against each other and kind of try to contextualize it within one another. But I do think Just you do need someone on offense at a skill position, and here's why. The Chiefs, every Super Bowl they've won, Kelsey's been a blue chip talent. I think you could argue in this last playoff run that he wasn't a blue chip talent. Every other playoff run, he has been a blue chip Hall of Fame sort of talent at a skill position. The Eagles, A.J. Brown, I think absolutely qualifies, and then this last one, you've got Saquon Barkley as well, right? The 49ers in that last Super Bowl. So you've got Christian McCaffrey, and I think George Kittle's a blue chip tight end, right? And Ayuk's playing well, things like that. So then you go to the Rams and Bengals a couple of years ago, okay? So you've got Cooper Kupp playing like a blue chipper then, right? I believe that was Cooper Kupp's big explosive season, that 2021 season where he won the Triple Crown. And then on the Bengals, obviously you have Jamar Chase. The Buccaneers in the 2020 season, you've got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both playing very high level. I think you can argue Mike Evans is like the guy there, and obviously probably a Hall of Famer. The previous 49ers, Kittle, again, I think they're interesting because they're a little bit more like everybody played a role. But even then, you've got Kittle playing like a blue chipper. Then you're rolling all the way back to 2018. I think that's the first time where you can start to question a little bit. I don't remember that specific Patriots team too well, Austin, but did they have a blue chip on offense at a skill position? I mean,
See, no, not necessarily on offense, but that's the thing. That's always been the Patriots' MO is Tom Brady's always been a blue chip and the blue chip on offense, and they can plug anyone else in. And then in that Super Bowl, Gronkowski. So don't forget my guy Gronk. He played a huge role in that game. Had one catch that basically set up the one touchdown in the game that was massive.
Right.
But then the thing about that team is it was much more defensive minded. Like of all the teams we've talked about in the last 10 years, that was the team where the defense really won the championship. And so you got guys on defense like Stephon Gilmore that again made a massive play with that interception towards the end of the game. And so that's kind of, I think, the answer there with that team. So your trend is consistent.
Right. But yeah, you got to go all the way back to that 2018 season to find a team that maybe doesn't have like a true like high leverage moment impact sort of blue chip player at one of those skill positions. So I do think that's important. You have to have it. It's just a requisite to allow the quarterback to. I mean, there's different ways to attack and play the game offensively, but you have to have a blue chip that really enables you to do one at a very high level. So we're gonna go ahead and move on and talk about how we weigh all these against one another. I think. Let's go ahead and do that. So out of the three we've talked about, quarterback, coach, team construction, which do you guys think is the most important? And make your case. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go with team construction.
Okay.
Honestly, because I think QB is the most limiting, in my opinion. That if you have a horrible QB, you cannot win. But I think in order to really be a contender for that long, you need to have constant, steady roster construction every year, influx of new rookies who contribute right away. I think you need that consistency and just the stars in nearly every position to really be true contenders. I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing these rookie QBs struggle, because I think a lot of times the QBs are talented enough to win a Super Bowl, but I just think the rosters, they aren't really there. But if you have a roster such as like the Eagles, Lions, Niners for that past couple seasons, that team will always be a contender no matter who really is the option at QB. And I think a lot of these teams can kind of just like almost plug and play somewhat with the QB position. And I just think having an elite roster, especially on both ends of a ball, like Austin, you said earlier, having a 10 and 10, it's kind of hard to like not consider that team a contender if you are really more dominant, more talented. So I do actually think roster construction is probably the most important, but that doesn't mean I think GM is the most important, just because there are a lot of other factors in terms of roster construction too. But just having that final roster be there, I think is really the key to win.
Yeah. Austin?
Yeah, no, and I like your last comment there about it being more than just the GM because Keegan highlighted that too. Something we've mentioned in a previous episode is that the coach does so much more than just call the plays. And it really is that, he's part of hiring, he's part of like building that team. And like maybe the GM is really kind of the overarching, maybe visionary, but it really is kind of the coach. It's in that like day to day. And like we see teams prioritize who they hire at coach based on who they think they're going to bring in, like for offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. And even when a good coach comes into a new team, if that coordinator setup isn't correct, it doesn't necessarily work out. So I agree with what you're saying about roster construction, but you mentioned the quarterback and how it's like the most limiting position, and so that's why I really think that quarterback ends up being the most important. Again, I think it's kind of cliche to say, especially in today's NFL, that the quarterback is what's most important. But we really have not seen a team succeed from day one to Super Bowl without a pretty high level quarterback. I mean, you even saw me hate on Nick Foles, but in my opinion, it really is Carson Wentz that got him there, who was playing really well, and then Nick Foles played incredibly well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it is a a very consistent, amazing quarterback, but you at least need someone that plays very amazing and consistently in that at least that 1 year. And that's why you can have teams that you mentioned like the 2018 Patriots. Okay, aside from Gronk, there's not many other players that people can name. Now, LeGarrette Blount, pretty game-wrecking running back, but didn't play a massive role in that Super Bowl because it was so defensive minded. But when you got a guy like Tom Brady, we could go on and on about the positions that you don't mind being in as long as you got Tom Brady, because he's able to just do whatever you need in the fourth quarter. Same deal with Patrick Mahomes. Even in those years without like super elite weapons like he had in 2019, still able to succeed because he's able to just change a game on his own because teams have to game plan for him. And it's also another reason why the Eagles team were so good this year. Because even if you had an incredible offensive line and an incredible running back, you can just stack the box and you can at least do something to stop that run attack. But you have to worry about Hurts running it. And then you have to worry about Hurts throwing it over the top to these other guys. And so when you have a quarterback that can do it all, like we're seeing kind of coming up, Jaden Daniels, we've seen a little bit out of Stroud. Drake May is able to run and throw as well. All these young guys. We got Bo Nix, who I think is going to be really good as well. It really plays a huge role, and we can see how teams can go from bad to pretty dang good really quickly, even with a rookie quarterback.
So I love this. We all landed on a different answer. This is awesome. I'm on coach. I think you guys both make really great points. I think I'm on coach for a 4+ year window. I think if I was talking about one run, it's team construction for me. But if you want to talk 4+ year window, I'm in with the coach, and I think I'm going to make the case why, in that I think one of the things Austin said is, I've talked about, like, the coach has their hands in everything, right? I mean, they're crucial to so many aspects. I think you cannot find a dynasty without a coach who's really controlling things and keeping an even keel and doing a good job in multiple phases. And so where I'll go with this is, I think one of the primary factors is to have that sort of longevity in the NFL in terms of extending a run. You have to create value out of places where it's harder to find it. People often talk about making the right draft picks. Well, it's not so much just making the right draft picks as developing those players properly, right? You can't do anything with really talented players if they're not coached the right way, if they're not folded into the scheme, and it's not just teaching them how to play. It's also, how do you utilize them on the field? Like, it's two phases that the coach is involved in and crucial to with the draft pick. So I think there's three factors there. It's who do you pick, how do you use them, and how do you teach them and develop them. And two of those are directly, the result of the coaching. And like I said, the people the coach is hiring, right? And so I think it's the head coach. I think they're too crucial in too many phases of the organization. Including giving the GM input and stuff on the roster construction and team building. So I guess that's cheating a little bit, right? But I think it's too important across the board, and then obviously how they influence the scheme and all that. So I don't know, Tyler, you want to respond to us, and then Austin can respond to. I don't know how to sort this.
No, I understand your point. It's hard to do this because they all impact each other
right.
in a lot of ways too. like the only thing is I actually think coach is like the least limiting out of the three. Like I think you actually could do it. Just say you take an amazing QB. Just say you take Patrick Mahomes, put him on the Eagles roster, and hire Eberflus as a coach. I would take that team over a lot of other combinations that you can do. Like like I think you could make your way around it more. While I don't think you're winning a Super Bowl with Will Levis, depending on if you had Andy Reid or Bill Belichick and like the '85 Bears defense. Like it's just I think coach is the least limiting out of it. But I understand your point about if you're really trying to build that like 4+ year window, having that steady guy in the building, like in terms of player development and just overall like team morale is very important. But I feel like it's the least limiting.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree that it's like the least limiting, especially from the sense that like if you have a really good coach and really bad players, any good coach will say like, and one of them has like a quote where he's like, "I can't play the game for you." You know, even if he has a great game plan, like he can't go out there and make the throws that should be able to be made in the wide open coverages or the wide open routes that he theoretically designed. Whereas like a really good quarterback, let's say Tom Brady on that Bruce Arians coach Buccaneers team. I don't think Bruce Arians is necessarily a Hall of Fame level quarterback coach by any means. And so he goes out there, even if the play calling isn't that good, like the quarterback is still the field general. And there's a level to which the quarterback can compensate for mediocre coaching, whereas it doesn't really work in reverse.
I think that's fair. I think it's reasonable. I think maybe the way I look at it is if you're actually trying to build one of these teams and start them up from scratch, the coach is the aspect that you can actually get your hands on. So maybe that's a little bit more of why I'm coming at it from this direction is like you can really do that. Whereas the team construction is kind of a byproduct of good organizational operation and all that. And then the quarterback is a little bit of luck, a little bit of scouting, and a little bit of development there. So there's a lot that goes into the quarterback. But yeah, I get what you guys are saying. Like I think I get it being the least dependent, but I think it's also like I think McVay single-handedly has leveraged his team into 2 Super Bowls by the combination of both his scheme and the way he develops players.
Yeah, it has the highest ceiling. If you have a good coach, it can elevate, I think, a team to a pretty high extent, potentially more so than just a really good quarterback. Would you agree, Keegan, along with your thought process?
I honestly think the highest ceiling is the rarefied air of Mahomes and Brady, in that I just think because here's the thing, we've talked about how important roster construction is. Mahomes and Brady are the 2 quarterbacks who you look through history and look at their Super Bowl rosters and the teams they've drugged to championship games and all that and been like very competitive with. And it's like they simplify the roster construction and the way you have to build the team so much, right? Like you could hand Brady random weapons and players and be like, go make this work and still execute like and score enough points to make this work, and he would do it. And you can do the same thing with Mahomes. Like you can give Mahomes. We want to talk about like the downfall of a couple of the Chiefs Super Bowl has been crappy O-lines. It's not like they've ever had a really good one. The Chiefs are constantly asking Mahomes to overcome like a kind of mid-range trench game. And like they went and won a Super Bowl with a wide receiver 1, Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, I think the highest ceiling and what it enables you to do is Mahomes and Brady. Like I don't even know how to describe them because they're in a different tier in terms of what they've done in the playoffs than other quarterbacks, right? But on a general basis, I think I agree with you. The head coach gives you the highest ceiling because they just do everything, So one of those unicorns like a McVay, a Reid, a Belichick, that can kind of just do everything perfectly is really rare. All right. What do you guys think? Should we segue into this into evaluating some current teams and talk about who we think's in a 4-year window or has the best? Let's do two things. Let's pick out the teams we think are in 4-year windows, and then let's each give a team we think is most able to kind of kick off a 4-year window here in the near future. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sorry. Let me. Tyler, you wanna kick us off? You want to talk about the regular suspects? Do you think all 4 of the most recent championship game appearance teams? Do you think those are all in 4-year windows right now, or do you think one of them's missing?
Yeah, no, I think all 4 are clearly in it right now.
Oh, okay. You think the Commanders are clearly in a 4-year window?
I think they are.
Okay.
I think. Okay. I mean, this was just year 1 of it, but I have a hard time believing like they are not considered contenders for the next 3 years. Because I think Jaden Daniels is that good to the fact that I think he is the exception to rookie QB one.
Okay.
I think they have a solid enough roster where they will be contenders for the next 3 seasons. Is all they need to be. Well, do I think if I had to bet on it, do I believe they'll win a Super Bowl in that time? I would probably lean towards no, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do.
Here's the thing: is I look at the Commanders over the next 4 years, and I'm kind of like, I would be a little surprised if they make it to 2 out of the next 4 Super Bowls. I mean.
Okay, they make it to 2. Okay, yeah, if we're going by that specific definition, yeah, but I'm more talking like, just say they can contend for the next 4 years. I think they could.
I get that they're going to be contenders, but like I would see. Let me put it this way: I wouldn't be that surprised if the Bills landed in 2 out of the next 4 Super Bowls. I wouldn't be that surprised. I would be pretty surprised, I think, with the current like state of the Commanders roster, especially that defense. I would be pretty surprised if they landed there 2 out of the next 4 times. It's not about like can they or like what's the. I'm saying like the likelihood, right? I think you need to pass a certain threshold of like having the ability to appear in the Super Bowl multiple times to be a like 4-year window sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we just have different thresholds. Austin, what do you think? Am I being unfair? Or?
I think you're being relatively fair because you mentioned the defense. I don't think that I don't think they're gonna go to or win the Super Bowl this year unless they really go on a generational Jaden Daniels run, which I hope they do. I like the team. But I think they still need to do a little bit of work on the defense. But I would agree with Tyler that I think that they are at the level to which they can contend. And I think that they have started their window where they have the rookie contract, they have some good coaching, they have good weapons. If they can get some other like key pieces on defense, whether through free agency, trading, draft, whatnot, I think that they can make a big jump in the next 3 years to the sense that like maybe not this year or next year, but then they could go back to back in the third and fourth year. That wouldn't surprise me, depending on what they kind of start to build. But that does make me think of something else because you mentioned your doubts in the defense. So you have a team like the Bengals who has been to a Super Bowl, has a really good quarterback, some good weapons, but the defense has really kind of lagged behind. Who would you have the most confidence in the next 4 years, the Bengals or the Commanders?
I mean, I would have more confidence in Washington.
The Bengals missed the playoffs the last 2 years. I mean, I think here's the problem.
But see, that's the thing. Most people would view the Bengals as being better contenders the next 4 years or having a better chance. So that's why I was curious.
So my issue is that with the Bengals is that not only does the defense suck, you've got like 3 load-bearing pieces on the offense, in my opinion. Like if one of them goes down, it doesn't matter how good the rest of them. I mean, if the defense was really good, it'd be a different conversation. Like they wouldn't be you could limp your way through, I think. But like if Jamar Chase goes down, the Bengals cannot do anything like significant. They're no longer a top 10 offense in my opinion, right? If T Higgins even goes down, I think in a playoff setting, you're now no longer a high-level offense that can really break down playoff defenses, right? And then if Burrow goes down, obviously, I mean this is all teams, right? But if Burrow goes down, you're in a bad spot, and you can't make the case, right? And I think the reason that they're so like you got those 3 load-bearing pillars is because they can't figure out the offensive line and play really solid football there, and the run game isn't really effective against playoff defenses either, and so yeah, I think I like Washington's philosophy much better. I think their O-line is going to be significantly better with how well they've attacked that. And I just think, honestly, I think Daniels is better suited to the scheme they're trying to run than I think Burrow's like the scheme Burrow wants to run, which is like pure shotgun, sit back there and then win with superior talent. He refuses to play any other scheme, and I don't think it's effective, and especially against the nice, really schemed up, very conscientious AFC defenses. So
Yeah, I agree.
It works in the NFC for the Eagles, but that's also due to the fact that we have Yo-line.
right, well,
Like,
that's the thing
and
is
the
Hurts.
defense.
Even if like the blue chips aren't having the best day between Devontae Smith and AJ Brown at your skill positions, going out there and catching the ball, even if they're not having the best day, Jalen Hurts can afford to sit back there for 2.8 seconds and plus, right, just let them like run around and get open eventually.
Yeah.
It's a complete. They both approach the game with their skill position players in a very similar way. They've got very different advantages when it comes to the O line. So. Okay, so besides the Chiefs, Eagles, and Bills, which I think we all agree they've demonstrated so thoroughly that they're continuing, they're repeating, like they're doing. I think based off the way Josh Allen has played in the playoffs, it absolves him of the fact that he hasn't actually gotten to a Super Bowl yet. Besides those three teams, do we think there's anyone else in a 4-year window?
I think the Ravens.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think we got to mention the Ravens.
Okay.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, they haven't had the playoff success, but they have a generational caliber QB. They have an amazing coach who's already won a Super Bowl, and their roster is really good. It's probably one of the near the tops. I think they had the most Pro Bowlers or All Pros last year, one of the two. I think they have all the criteria we're looking for. They just haven't put it together. But I think going into the year, I think right now they're actually the betting favorite to win the Super Bowl. Not sure how much I agree with that, but
I
yeah,
think it's
they
still
are
the Eagles,
they are
but
contenders. They are still contenders, though. I
Yeah.
think for 4 years.
Okay, I'm with that. The one thing I'll say that I want to watch for with them is when Monken gets hired, because I think they've got Monken for one more season, and that offense has not been that effective in a passing sense, and being truly elite passing the ball without Monken. Like Monken kind of unlocked Lamar, and I'm not saying Lamar can't do it without him now that he's figured it out, right? So that's just something I want to watch that could throw a wrench in a 4-year sort of window, right? Is if Monken gets hired, and I mean, if they can't figure out that hire, then I get a little worried about what that looks like in terms of true like elite contention status. So. All right, let's have a little bit of fun, and let's each pick out a team that we think kind of a little bit more speedy here, but let's each pick out a team that we think could open up a 4-year Super Bowl window if a couple things go right here. Basically started this year. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go right off the bat with the Chargers.
Okay.
I think it fits in the philosophy I'm saying. I really like their roster. I really like what they're doing with the O line right now. Especially, I think they have I think they actually have the second best tackle duo in the league right now, and their tackle duo is still really young. I mean, they have the QB there. The weapons are starting to blossom. We saw with McConkey this year. I think I think they're probably only two. They probably only need one more weapon now. I actually think to really be an elite offense. They have the coaching, and both coaches. They have what was his name? The defensive coach from Michigan.
Shoot. I know who you're talking about. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm blanking on the name, but yeah, no, he was great in Michigan. I think his scheme's really good. The Chargers defense definitely did overperform. Oh yeah,
Jesse Minter.
Yeah, he overperformed last year with defense, but I think that defense is still going to be better. I know you are down on it, Keegan, but I still think that's where they need to improve to really become like a real contender. But they kind of are checking off all the boxes, and I don't think we have to wait that much longer until they really do have this season where they actually could win and maybe take the division one year if the Chiefs kind of have a down year or something like that.
I agree that the Chargers aren't too far away from it. I just think that I'm not sold on the way they're going about getting the final pieces to make it click, but maybe they're right and I'm wrong, right? So, Austin, what about you? You got a team in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first off, I think there are a few teams that are pretty close. some playoff teams like the 49ers, the Packers, and the Lions, I think are teams that really kind of have what they need right now and are starting to open some windows. But a team that I think that kind of like what you said, kind of like along with the Chargers, just need a few more pieces, really are the Patriots. I would think that we've talked about it in the rebuild, like starting to kind of get something going, got the quarterback, hopefully got the coach, got some really key defensive pieces, can really start to add some more weapons and start to open up a window. I would say that the Chargers are maybe one step ahead just because I think Herbert is maybe a little bit more proven than Drake May. But I think that Drake May definitely can be what Herbert has been. And then with a few more offensive weapons, a couple more key defensive guys, again, not this year, maybe not next year, but kind of in the next 4 years, I really see them kind of starting to open that up.
Okay, all right. Tyler, how do you think the Patriots are that close?
Yeah, I don't think they're that close yet. I still think they could easily do it, and I like what they're building right now. And I think Drake May is going to be a superstar. But I still think like maybe like in 3 years, and then they could do the next four possibly. But like in the next, we're mostly talking like soon. I don't think they're anywhere near soon.
All right, not close, but they could easily do it, says Tyler. All right.
I still think just a few years away. But
I think the other thing to watch with the Patriots is that there's a few, like, if they were going to start contending right now, I think that would involve a couple older players being load-bearing pieces, like Stephon Diggs probably being a significant, like, you need to have him playing well piece. Some of those defensive linemen they brought in, like probably one of those defensive linemen they brought in needs to step up, and they're all on the older side. So I struggle. And Carlton Davis playing corner, right? He's on the older side too. So I just think I would want you get a little finicky there, and so I would want to see. I would want to see is over the next 1 to 2 years, can their additions replace those older currently load-bearing pieces, right?
Yep.
And actually provide you some youth and some upside, there. So, but I get what you're saying, like the base foundation pieces, like you've got the quarterback rolling, we can theorize very easily that the coach is there, right? And so then if you just kind of make the things click with the roster construction and the team building, I see where you're going with it. I get it.
Yep.
So I'm going to wrap this up. I think this is a really easy one. I'm going the Vikings. I love the Vikings. Yeah. The Vikings are littered with talent in all the right places. So you've got high leverage players on offense in those skill position roles. I mean, Justin Jefferson, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Signed, sealed, delivered. It's going to happen, right? And then you've got great number 2, 3, like pass catching options. They fit it all together. It works really well. You've got great talent on the O-line. The defensive line is a little bit not quite that juggernaut unit that you kind of want to have on the other side of the ball, but the scheme's really good with Flores, right? So you can kind of play a little bit of the Spagnuolo like opportunistic ball, right? So I love that. And so yeah, you got playmakers on both sides of the ball. I think they're building the roster in a really, really smart way and all that. And then you've got Kevin O'Connell running things, and I think Kevin O'Connell is so smart, so thoughtful about the ways he builds things. He's so communicative with his quarterbacks about, like, what do you want? How do we build this thing for you? How do we make sure the quarterback understands what's supposed to happen on every play, right? And so I think they just, unlike some of these other teams, they just need one piece to click. But I get being skeptical about it because it's J.J. McCarthy, A lot of people had problems with him, especially like he's almost definitely not going to be one of those elite quarterbacks. He's going to be more in the vein of Jared Goff, right? If he's going to be on running one of those contending teams. So, I think they've got a serious shot at this, and I think Kevin O'Connell is one of the best guys to bring out J.J. McCarthy if he can be a guy like that. But that is one thing to click. So.
That's funny you said that about Jared Goff, because I was going to ask you that same question, because I was wondering if you thought J.J. McCarthy, is he going to be more like is he going to be Patrick Mahomes? Is he going to be Jared Goff? Or is he going to kind of have a start like Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold? Like, if he does come out like Sam Wilson or Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, like, does that kind of foil what you view from the Vikings?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he can go do that. I don't think he can go to the Super Bowl with that. So yeah, he's got to get past the game, the playmaking game managers that kind of can do some things and lead the offenses in the regular season and go to like serious ball management. I think, I don't want to preclude his ceiling. Like, we could always have another Tom Brady, maybe, but I'm not going to bet on it until I start seeing the evidence for that. And so, yeah, I think he's got to be one of those, just control the game. Like, you make throws in key spots, but you're not the explosive playmaker. You're not the one breaking the other team's defensive rules, right? So,
yeah. He can run though.
He can. That's fair. All right. Any last thoughts on this episode, or should we wrap it up?
I think we're good.
Good to go. All right. Thanks for watching. I thought we had some really good back and forth on this episode, so I hope you enjoyed that. Leave us a like, subscribe, please. Leave us a comment if you will. I love having good discussions with people in the comments, even if they think we're completely wrong and idiots. But yeah, let us know how, and we'll have that discussion. So it was a good time. Good July 5th episode here. Hopefully it comes out pretty soon. So yep. Thanks for watching.